So Itauma was on Piers Morgan. So let me give you that boxing philosophy perspective. And we're going to explore some ideas, and hopefully we can bring nuance and understanding. Now the first idea is Joe Rogan calling him the real deal. And Itauma's response, surprisingly, was to put it to one side. I'm going to be what I'm going to be. Why? That's my question. Why does the most hyped heavyweight since Mike Tyson refuse to feel the hype? Now, what is a Joe Rogan cosign, or what does it mean? Well, what it means is pressure. Lots of pressure. Joe Rogan has a massive visibility to the world. He is part of the algorithm, or some may say he is the algorithm. He's huge. And there is so much expectation on Itauma's shoulders. Massive expectation. And that expectation is not just to win, but to win in a dominant fashion. The fans, they expect a dominant and an emphatic victory. And Itauma, under this pressure, needs to remain stoic. He needs to remain calm under pressure, which is difficult because pressure, it can hinder your performance. And Hrgović, let's be honest, Hrgović is a seasoned operator. He will bring resistance. He will bring a game plan, and he will be punching viciously. But Itauma may have the best footwork in the heavyweight division. What does this mean? Well, it means that the hype is based on talent, and therefore in that sense, the hype is real. And it's important to remember that hype, what does it create? It creates expectation, but talent still has to survive the pressure created by that expectation. And the next idea is that Piers caught him gulping water and tried to call it nerves. Itauma said, it's just the LA heat after 2 hours of golf. Itauma, he may be nervous. How could he not be nervous under such an occasion? Hrgović also probably has a level of nerves. They're human after all. And Hrgović is probably worried. He's probably worried about the cuts. He's prone to cut, and that's a massive issue. And deep in his thoughts, he may be thinking, and I'm talking about Filip Hrgović, he may be thinking, how good is Itauma? And from Itauma's perspective, from his perspective, he may be thinking about his stamina. Will he be able to pace himself effectively over 12 rounds if Hrgović can take the power? They both of them, Hrgović and Itauma, are probably curious about each other's power. And nervousness is not a weakness. It's a natural human reaction. The reaction to the nervousness, however, is essential. And it's important to remember that nerves are human. The difference is whether you can control the emotion or allow the emotion to control you. And the next idea is that Moses states that with boxing you train to get lucky. The more you train, the luckier you get. Based on this logic, Itauma will be training hard, and therefore the harder he trains, the luckier he will get. If Hrgović best camp is true, that may play on his mind, because Hrgović has been stating that this is the best camp he's had for 5 to 6 years. That means that resistance is going to be coming with a lot of luck. But if Moses has trained hard and had a great camp, he will be very confident. And according to his logic, he will be very lucky. And luck may appear in the moment, but preparation increases the probability of that moment going your way. And then the next idea is that everybody's touting me as the next hot property. And this is Itauma speaking. Once I beat Hrgović, I've done these things. Not I'm going to do these things. So there's the difference. I've done these things. No, he would have done those things. And in this context, those things would be beating Hrgović and therefore being a champion. I think it's important to realize here that Moses Itauma is aware. He's aware of the expectations. He's aware of the Mike Tyson comparisons. He's aware of the expectations from Britain. The bright lights, they will be brighter for this one. But many people before him have passed the test. Lennox Lewis, he passed the test. Anthony Joshua, he passed the test. Tyson Fury, he passed the test. Daniel Dubois passed the test. Frank Bruno eventually passed the test. But will Moses Itauma pass the test? And will Hrgović test Moses Itauma's chin? Will he test Moses Itauma's body? Will he test Moses Itauma's ring IQ? Will he test Moses Itauma's mental toughness? Because potential creates the question, but resistance, that creates the answer. Just a quick caveat. The reason I said Frank Bruno eventually passed the test, because I believe it was on his fourth attempt, or his third or fourth attempt, when he won the world title. Now, I just want to make a quick announcement before I move on to the next idea. And I want you to check out my free chapter. So go to the comments, go to the pinned comments, click the link, and you can get my free chapter sent straight to your email. Remember, if you don't receive it, make sure you check your spam or your junk folder. So now let's go to the next idea. Moses Itauma states, I don't put a facade on, a facade on, I believe. Is that the right word? Facade. I'm not braggadocious. I'm not swaggadocious. And I think what we're getting here is an insight into the personality. Or to put it another way, this is just Moses. This is just his personality. He is not a braggadocious character. Similar to Lennox Lewis, he is calm and collective. He's not loquacious. And when I use the term loquacious, he doesn't just mouth off or talk badly about opponents. He's calm in his approach. In a sense, the action in the ring does the talking. Because Moses Itauma is an exciting fighter, he does not need to talk excessively. To give an example, Floyd Mayweather was a defensive boxing genius, but he was a defensive fighter. Therefore, his talking and his trash talk and him being loquacious and him being disrespectful, that was an important part of his branding and his marketing. But with Moses Itauma, the fighting does the talking. So in this sense, when the performance is loud enough, the personality does not need to shout. And then the next idea is that Moses states he's all three: Slovak mother, Nigerian father, and raised in Kent. And he refuses to pick a side. Why does the man carrying British heavyweight hopes refuse to box himself into one identity? And it's important to remember here that identity does not always need one box. Sometimes strength comes from carrying every part of who you are. And the next idea is that the 7 pound a week story is real. But Moses Itauma is trying to sway away from it. Why? Because according to him, it gives the middle class people a limit. According to him, he had a normal childhood and he won't weaponize his poverty. Of course, we can ask the obvious question, what is a normal childhood? But there clearly are different levels of poverty. For example, poverty in economically less developed countries can be different to poverty in economically more developed countries. There's still poverty, but they're different due to the context. And I guess you can state that there are struggling working class people, but there are also struggling middle class people. And again, we can say that everyone's struggle is unique and different. And, you know, the struggle scale can be 1 to 10, 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000, etc. And struggling is not just economic either. Britain, for example, according to some statistics that I've seen, has a rising percentage of poor mental health. But that doesn't mean that Britain is a bad place to live. And another distinction that's important is that your poverty does not necessarily determine if you can take a punch or determine how well you play the game of boxing. Just because you have poverty does not mean you're not strong, or does not mean you're strong. And just because you had rich parents does not mean that you're mentally weak. And in a sense, what we can say here is that struggling, or the struggle, it has many currencies, and money is only one of them. And the next idea is when you get to a certain point, there's something more appealing than money. And Itauma, it appears, is now stopped being driven by just cash. And let's make a distinction here. And here is the premise, here is the argument. It's hard to make money. That's why it's so desirable. Or it's hard to make enough money. Inflation is soaring. It's going up exponentially. Also, many people probably have poor money management. In a capitalist society that's trying to sell you products or services, that's a big problem. And when you make enough money or you make a lot of money, perhaps the journey becomes very different. Your perspective changes. Also, successful boxers, they get paid handsomely on the front end and on the back end. The 1% of boxers, they make the most money. So if money is not the only goal, then perhaps legacy and the glory start to become more meaningful. Let me give you maybe a writer's analogy. If you're a writer and you write the book for money, that's going to be different to the book that you write to change the world. And it seems that Moses Itauma is now entering a different phase. And money can become the journey, but once the security arrives, legacy can become the stronger currency. And then the next idea is that AJ and Fury have both warned him about the crash. The higher the fight, the bigger the crash after. It's the come down after winning the title, the fight nobody trains him for. Of course, when you win, there is a different journey. But the focus right now surely is to win. The focus would have been to have the best camp. And the focus now surely is the implementation on the strategies. Different fighters, of course, will have different voices. Some people are naturally confident. Others need to develop that confidence. In an ideal world, confidence comes from your talent, your camp, your team, and in the strategy formed. But what can challenge that confidence? That's a good question. The rumors that are circulating is that Filip Hrgović has had a good camp. Hrgović visually looks in good shape. There are subtle things here. Everything, however, can change with a jab, a hook, an uppercut, or just a moment. And it's important to realize that confidence is built before the fight, but one punch can test everything that confidence was built upon. And then the next idea is on pressure. According to Moses Itauma, you never know until you're under the bright lights. He won't fake confidence about what he hasn't felt yet. And these lights right now are going to be the brightest that Moses Itauma has been under. But it may be the brightest lights that Filip Hrgović has ever been under. Hrgović, based on interviews and media workouts, he looks like he is managing the pressure very, very well. This will mean nothing, however, if Hrgović does not improve his defense. But the bright lights, they're getting brighter. Even being on Piers Morgan is a brighter light. And it's important to remember that the bright lights, they do not create character. They expose what was already there. And the 11th idea is that being punched in the face should be part of your plan. Have a plan B, a plan C, etc. Now, here's my perspective on this. I think boxing is all about adjustments. It's about making the right adjustments at the right time. Let me give an example. So for nearly every single boxing match, there is a jab battle. But sometimes you need to adjust the jab. So you might need to feint first, or maybe you need to double feint. Maybe you need to shoot the jab to the chest. Maybe you need to throw the counter jab, or throw the up jab. Maybe you need to counter the jab to the body. It's not just having a plan. It's about making the right subtle adjustments. Maybe you need to adjust your feet, create a new angle. Boxing is all about subtle adjustments, and that's part of having ring IQ. And in this sense, a plan gives you a direction, but intelligence is knowing when that plan needs to change. And the next idea comes from Teddy Atlas. He says he, Moses Itauma, is better than Mike Tyson at the same stage. More dimensions, more traps, more counters. He is more complete, according to Teddy Atlas, than a young Mike Tyson. This is the highest praise boxing can give, or is it a curse? Let's set a foundation here. Teddy Atlas is a boxing legend. Teddy Atlas is a boxing philosopher. He turns boxing dialogues into philosophical lectures. Teddy Atlas is credible and Teddy Atlas is passionate. He also has a history with Mike Tyson, a real history of Mike Tyson, which we won't get into here. This is amazing praise. Mike Tyson was, in his prime, not just a vicious fighter, but he was an elite conditioned athlete. So this is a praise of the highest order. And again, comparison can validate the talent, but eventually every great fighter has to escape the shadow of another man's greatness. The next idea is that he chased the youngest champion ever record, and he missed it, and now calls second place the first loser. Here's a perspective. He can't break the record, so that's less pressure. Surely that's a good thing. I can kind of feel that there's a lot of pressure on Moses Itauma's shoulders. He is also doing massive media runs for this fight. There are huge media commitments in boxing, and I feel that in boxing, or in today's boxing, the media commitments are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I wonder what type of psychological impact that can have on a fighter, being asked the same question over and over and over and over again. I think to myself, I hope his camp has prepared him psychologically, because the pressure, it's mounting. Hrgović is also doing the media run, but he's not on Piers Morgan. From a scale of 1 to 10, there are different types of pressure, and Moses is experiencing it at the very high end. Think of this. Sometimes losing one record removes a burden, but greatness simply replaces it with another expectation. And then the next idea is Tyson's advice. Not everybody's a bum. You can learn more from your losses than your wins. And I think this is so true. It's a sentiment that is stated in the great kung fu film, Enter the Dragon, which featured Bruce Lee. And it's a great, great film, by the way. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And I believe the quote in that film is, "We are all ready to win, just as we are born, knowing only life, but it is defeat that you must learn to prepare for." So to put it in context, when Mike Tyson lost to Evander Holyfield, he lost like a warrior. Of course, the rematch, he exhibited a different approach. But the point is that our defeats, they teach us about who we are. And also additionally to that, it can show you the truth about your inner circle. Typically, and this is a narrative bias, but when you're winning, everyone is your cousin. But when you're losing, only your true friends, they will find you. Because we learn, we build, and discover through our defeats. And when you lose, the fake friends, they go. So through the losses, you reveal the true people in your corner. And it's important to remember that in life, we don't only just lose in the ring. So in a sense, we can say that victory shows what you can do, and defeat often shows who you are and who truly stands beside you. And then the next idea is on defeat. It'll be more about how I lost than if I lost. And his thoughts about losing and already deciding the manner matters more than the result. Now, people might see this as a negative thing, but I don't think it's a negative thing. Moses Itauma clearly has a philosophical side to him. So talking about a loss is not a concession. Talking about a loss is not a concession. It's a thought experiment. And the way you lose, is it not important? Let me give an example. When Evander Holyfield fought Riddick Bowe in the first fight, he lost in an absolute war. The 10th round was reckoned to be one of the greatest rounds of all time. But in that defeat, and that was Evander Holyfield's first defeat, he got a tremendous amount of respect. It actually solidified his brand of being a warrior, a true warrior. The point is is that not all defeats are the same. So when Moses is giving us this thought experiment, there's some truth to that. And the point here is that the record, it only shows the loss, but the character is revealed in how that loss happens. And then the next idea is that Itauma sparred Fury and now says fighting him would be disrespectful because Fury is past his prime. I think a lot of people would agree with the assertion that Fury is past his prime. And I think here is that respect, it's an important currency. They have sparred historically, and maybe they have some type of relationship. Maybe they're an associate, maybe there's a friendship, I'm not sure. But respect, some may say, is a lost currency to many. But maybe it's not a lost currency to Itauma, because he could see the decline of Tyson Fury as an opportunity, but he doesn't. And in a sense, in a brutal sport, respect may be one of the few currencies that should never lose its value. And then the next idea is about the best advice AJ and Fury both gave Itauma. Get yourself a good lawyer. Boxing, of course, is a part of capitalism. Unfortunately, it may not be all about the money, but the money is extremely important. When large amounts of money is involved, you need to protect your assets. You don't just need a lawyer. It's not just a lawyer. You need a good lawyer. It's not just someone with the qualification. It's someone with the experience. It's someone with the effective communication. It's someone that can get the job done. This is part of boxing, and that is not spoken about enough. Hiring the right people to do the capitalism part effectively, that's essential, because in boxing, you have a small window of opportunity to maximize your financial interest. And not only do you need to make money, you need to protect the money that you have. And in a sense, the fighter protects himself in the ring, but the right team protects everything he earns outside it. And the next idea is AJ's real warning. Prioritize your boxing. Going off doing this and that might not affect you physically. It might not affect you physically, but mentally it could. I think this is good advice from a former two-time heavyweight champion, a man that has done a lot in boxing, a man that has been to the top of the mountain and has overcome adversity. You can learn a lot from your own mistakes, but you can also learn from other mistakes or from other people's mistakes. That's not to say that you can't have hobbies and that you can't have business adventures, but the focus needs to be in boxing. While you're boxing, you need to be focusing on boxing, because you can't play boxing. Boxing, how can I put it? Capitalism is serious, very serious. Winning is serious, extremely serious. And boxing is also extremely serious. And therefore, you have to give it the right attention and the right dedication. And in a sense, success creates distractions. Mastery requires knowing which opportunities deserve your attention and which ones steal it. And then the next idea is that Usyk says he doesn't want to fight Itauma because he'd break him. Itauma's response? Absolutely not. Itauma has to believe he can beat Usyk. And of course, Usyk believes in his ability. Usyk is a generational great, a legend. His resume is beyond impressive. He is still at the top of the mountain looking down at everyone else. There's Usyk, and then there's the rest. He has incredible credibility and technically just a beautiful fighter. Itauma is still climbing the mountain. So Usyk is at the top of the mountain, but Itauma is still climbing the mountain. But Usyk, to his credit, acknowledges Itauma, and he sees the potential that maybe he might be passing on the torch to Itauma. And when you pass on the torch, I think people might visualize that as you got to fight the person to pass on the torch and lose. Sometimes you can leave and pass on the torch figuratively. So in a sense, Usyk may be standing on the mountain, but Itauma has to believe that every mountain can eventually be climbed. And he has been climbing that mountain. And then the last idea is, do I think I'm the best heavyweight? Itauma states, yes. I don't just feel like I've proven it yet. So yes, he feels like the best heavyweight, but he hasn't proven it yet. And why is the gap between knowing you're the best and proving it the loneliest place in boxing? Here's a premise. Every boxer should think that they are the best. But more importantly, every boxer should train to be the best. And in this sense, it's not just psychology, it's the implementation. It's about doing the work. Believing is not enough. You have to be dedicated. You have to go into training and give your very best. You have to give your life to the mastery of boxing. And in this sense, the belief starts the journey, but preparation and performance and evidence are what turn belief into truth. Quick announcement. I have a free chapter from my boxing book. So click the link below to visit the landing page and get your free chapter. Remember to check your spam/junk folder if you don't receive it. Also, let me know what you think. Constructive feedback is always welcome.